So when we were looking to review the best smokers for beginners, we wanted to reach out to Charbroil and find out which one of their smokers was probably going to be the best smoker for a couple of things that we look for when we judge this. One of them is going to be price point. The other is going to be simplicity of use, right? How easy it is to actually utilize the smoker, and so there's some features we'll get into that make this ideal for that scenario, and then we'll talk about maybe some of those cons to some of these entry-level smokers as well. So what we're going to do is unbox it. We'll get it put together. We'll lay out all the parts, then put it together so you can kind of see what assemblies required with it, and then we'll go ahead and actually test it. I got a prime rib roast we'll put in there, see how well it maintains temperature and a couple of other things. So let's go ahead and just kind of take a look at what you get here in the box. Basically, it's going to come with 4 racks of space, a total of 720 square inches of cooking space. Typically, each rack you're going to be able to get probably almost a whole rack of ribs on there, or you can cut it in half and fit a rack right there on each one of those. So it's plenty of space in the deluxe size. This is the Charbroil Deluxe Digital Electric Smoker with remote. And then you can look also, we'll talk a little bit of the quality of the build as far as the material. It's a double steel wall that's designed to keep the heat in, but also to keep that exterior nice and cool on the outside so nobody walks by and accidentally burns himself. One of the things also about this smoker is it's 50 pounds, so it's among the lightest smokers that they make. So if you're looking for something that you can maneuver easily, that's going to be a plus side for you. So 800 watts is what we're looking at on this, which means that you're looking at about a typical temperature of about 275 degrees is right around your maximum temperature, which is very typical for the smokers in this range. So this is a $300 model, which again, when we look at what is the best smoker for a beginner, we look at price as well as functionality and ease of use. So that's going to come in at a price point that's very affordable, and we'll talk a little bit more about design quality as we start to unbox it and see what we have. Also, real quick, you can buy the cover. It doesn't come with it. The cover's $15 if you want to purchase it, and if you have to store it outside, I would certainly recommend the cover. That's just pretty much best practice for any smoker or grill that you're going to get. Alright, so we pulled everything out of the boxes. This is pretty much what was inside of the smoker. As we unboxed it, this is pretty much the parts that are going to go inside. Again, no assembly. So you're going to see here that we've got our drip pan, which is not designed the best if you're trying to kind of keep something real clean and nice when you're smoking something. All the drippings are going to come onto this pan, which is good in a way because those drippings are going to fall on here and turn into delicious, flavorful smoke. The downside of that is that this is going to get caked with a bunch of fat and grease and drippings, and it's going to be kind of difficult to clean. So that was one of the things that we didn't really like about the drip pan. Then you've got here for your water. This is the water tray, so you can keep everything nice and moist in there. Water also helps control the internal temperature of your smoker when you're smoking. So water actually serves as more than just to keep the meat moist. It's going to help keep that temperature at a nice consistent rate. So it comes with 4 stainless steel or iron racks, and then we have the smoker box here for your chips. So this thing is going to hold about 4 cups of wood chips, which Charbroil says 8 hours on the wood chips. We found it to be closer to 4 to 5 hours, maybe 6 hours tops at 225. So you're going to likely, if you're going to be doing like a brisket or a pork butt, you're going to have to change this out at least one time throughout to keep a nice consistent smoke going throughout the whole time. And then this is that remote we talked about, right? So the remote has the same controls as you'll see pretty much right here on the top of the Charbroil that allow you to control temperature, that allow you to control the cook time, and so you'll get all those readings right from your couch. It's 100 feet of wireless technology on there. So the remote itself is kind of leaves something to be desired as it relates to quality, but again, $300, right? So we want to keep the price point low to make it an ideal situation for a beginner. So it's not something that you want to drop or leave in the sun or any of those things, okay? So as we come over here into the smoker, you'll find one of the nice features about this right up front is that it comes with a wired-in internal probe. So this means that you can use this in the meat without having to like buy another Wi-Fi or wireless thermometer. If you just want to get like one reading, it's really nice. It's right here ready to go. Just shove it right in and you'll get that reading right here on your remote, as well as up here on the digital screen if you scroll through some of those settings. So you can see that the quality is okay. The main thing about this and what they do really well is the double steel wall insulator right here. So that's going to keep your heat in, which is the main thing that's going to keep that internal temperature consistent. And then it's going to keep the outside nice and cool. So that way if you have little ones, you know, they can walk up and pretty much, you know, be okay if they were to touch it or brush up against it. So we've got the latch here. The latch is pretty good. Yeah, the latch is fair quality. But again, I think one of the things that's going to decide where this thing ranks in our list of the best smoker for a beginner is going to be how well does it actually keep the internal temperature that it says it's keeping, right? So we're going to put that to the test here in a bit. When we start actually smoking, we've got a prime rib roast we're going to put in here. We're going to have a couple of different probes hooked up through the Fireboard Wi-Fi thermometer device, which is a very nice Wi-Fi thermometer. And so we'll be able to kind of keep tabs on the internal temperature of the smoker as well as the meat too. So again, 50 pounds, lightest smoker that you're probably going to find. 800 watt system, which means that you're looking at about a total maximum temperature of 275 degrees. Okay, so that's very typical for a lot of the smokers at this level. You know, like you know, it's 275 is fair enough for any kind of smoking that you're going to do. It's just probably going to be around the 225 range, but that's pretty much what you're looking at there. So let's go ahead and we're going to get this thing hooked up. One of the things that I wanted to mention is that it does recommend that you season this to get rid of any of the kind of manufacturer chemicals or whatever treatments that they use in here. By seasoning, all they mean is that you're turning this thing on for 2 hours at 275 and then you're good to go. So while it does come ready to go, you probably want to give yourself a little time to get that seasoning before you do your first smoke. Okay, so I just wanted to show you real quick, this is really the only assembly required. We've got the 4 grates in there, and then you have your probe that just stays attached there. So what we're going to want to do, our chip tray is going to kind of sit right in here. Okay, then we're going to slide the drip pan right in here. And it'll sit at a little bit of an angle so that basically all those grease droppings and stuff will kind of come right into the water tray there that you have. So that's pretty much it. You also on the side here are going to have an easy maintenance grease pan right there, drip pan. It's going to catch all those drippings. So that's pretty easy to access on the side as well. Okay, so we're just going to power this on, and what we're going to do is the season, so we want to take it up to 275. So we're going to do that without using and engaging the preheat option, but we basically hit the temp button, and then you probably can't make out the digital on the video there, but it's at 275 right there, and if we wanted to preheat, we would just go once more and then hit the temperature, and it's going to automatically engage into preheat. Preheating is about 40 minutes, so just expect that it's going to be 40 minutes before you're going to reach the temperature you want. Once it reaches that, you'll get 3 beeps, and then it'll beep once every like 30 seconds after that to let you know it's preheated. One of the things with this, the alarm or the beep, whatever you want to call it, is not very loud, so you do have to kind of keep an eye when you're getting close, but you can also use that remote to kind of get those readings from inside. So again, we just want to do the 275 season. So we'll go ahead and get that engaged there. And you don't want to put any water in the pan when you season it. So you're just going to go ahead and season it with the parts in just like that without the water. Okay, we're back, and what we want to do is kind of monitor the internal temperature of the smoker and see how that stacks up to the readings that we get on the digital reader for the Char-Broil. So what we're going to do is we're going to hook up the Fireboard Wi-Fi thermometer reader to the internal temperature of the ambient as well as for the meat. But mostly what we're concerned about is the ambient probe to see how accurate we are. So we use Fireboard here. This one is a Wi-Fi thermometer. It's got the capability for 6 probes, and it's been fairly accurate for us. So it's been about 10 minutes that we put the meat in here, and so we're reaching our internal temperature right now of, on the Char-Broil it's reading 181. And so it's going to cycle. We got 190 on the internal ambient probe that we've installed with the Fireboard. So the Fireboard's going to be a little bit more accurate, so we know that we're off by about 8 degrees. So we expected a little bit of difference in the temperature that we were reading from the Charbroil to the Fireboard. So we want to monitor that throughout this cook, and so over the next 4 or 5 hours, we got a prime rib roast in there. We'll come back and we'll kind of show you how accurate we're running on the internal temperature of this, because again, the internal temperature is very important. I mean, bells and whistles are nice, but really ultimately at the end of the day you want to know that you're at an accurate temperature. You want to know what the accurate temperature reading is, and so that's what we're going to keep monitoring and reporting back to you guys. So we'll be back in about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we'll report where we're at as far as the difference in internal temperature, as well as take a look at, we've got the prime rib roast on the top here, and then we cut off the ribs from the prime rib roast, and we'll just do those like you would like a normal rack of ribs. And instead of the water pan here, we just went ahead and put in a tray with a little water. Mostly what I want to do is capture these great juices that are going to come off here over the next 5 to 6 hours to make a nice au jus sauce. So we'll be back and we'll show you what we got. So we're back here after about an hour and a half of smoking, and we've got about an hour, roughly almost an hour of consistent smoking where the door's actually been shut so that we can get a good reading on time. So again, we're touching base on how well does the temperature hold within the smoker, and how accurate are the thermostats within the temperature or within the smoker to tell us where we're at. So again, we've hooked up the Fireboard to this, which is a Wi-Fi thermometer, which we're using to read the ambient temperature. And we're going to compare that to what we're getting on the Charbroil device. And one thing to note is that when you set this, you can either set this to cook by time, or the internal probe that comes with it, which you stick in the meat, you can use that to also differentiate, you know, how well you're cooking and where you're at. And those are the two readings that you're going to get on the screen. It's basically the temperature of the meat, or that ambient probe if it's not plugged into the meat and just kind of sitting in there, which kind of does a job of reading the ambient temperature of the grill, but not really designed to do that if you don't actually have it plugged into the meat. So what we're looking at here on the digital display is it's telling me I've set my meat thermometer at 120, so I want to know that, you know, when it reaches 120, I'm going to pull the prime rib roast off, because that's about the temperature I want that prime rib roast, so that I can give it a nice sear and then reach about 125, which is the ideal medium rare temperature for the prime rib roast. So again, what we're looking at is 2 different toggles between 120 for the temperature of the meat, and then 96, which is actually I'm sorry, the 96 is the temperature of the meat, the 120 is the temperature that I've set it at for that meat probe. So one of the things is that this does not tell us the ambient temperature of the internal grill itself, which is very important for us to know that we're on point. So you definitely want to invest in some type of a thermometer that's going to give you the internal ambient temperature, which is what I'm using the Fireboard for. So channel 1 is the internal temperature, and it's cycling through because I got 2 other probes in here. But you'll see that channel 1 says that the internal temperature of this is 257 degrees right now. And so I've set this to be at 235 to cook at. So you can tell that we're off a little bit, because really we should be at 235, which is where I've set the smoker at. It's cooking at 257, which I don't mind, because it's just going to mean my meat gets cooked a little bit quicker. And ultimately the temperature is fairly consistent. So if I can cook consistently at 257, I'm okay with that, even though it's not the ideal 225 for smoking meat, right? So we can see that on the Charbroil, it's telling me that I've set it at 120 for my meat probe, that I want to know that when my meat is done at 120, go ahead and give me a beep. And so when my meat reaches 120, it's going to alarm me. But the meat right now is saying that it's at 96 degrees. However, on my Fireboard device, I've got here in channel 2, which we got to wait for it to cycle back, you're going to see the discrepancy between the temperature. So in channel 2, which is where I'm measuring, it's telling me I'm at 74 degrees, and the Charbroil is saying that it's actually at 96 degrees. Now, here's one thing to note. You can get a discrepancy of about 15 to 20 degrees in any one piece of meat, depending on where the actual probe is stuck in. So it's not to say that this is off by necessarily 15 or 20 degrees. However, there is a pretty big discrepancy here with where their meat probe is saying that we're at and where the actual fireboard probe is at. So that's one thing. You definitely want to always invest in a good thermometer that you can trust to get you an accurate temperature, to know exactly where you're at. So the only one thing that I would say is that we don't like the idea that we can't tell where we're at internally with the ambient temperature of the Char-Broil smoker. So that's one of the things that we'll consider when we decide where we're rating the best smoker for beginners. But ultimately, we're looking at probably at this point a discrepancy between 15 or 20 degrees. It seems to be somewhat consistent, but let us smoke for about another hour, hour and a half. We'll come back and we'll let you know based on where we're at with our graph. So before I leave you, I'll just show you this graph that we're looking at here. If we can get a close-up on this. Basically, this is just a graph showing us where we're at with the ambient temperature inside the smoker. And you can kind of see that, like I said, we've been smoking consistently with the door closed for about an hour, which is right here at about 437. And you can see that it's raised way beyond the internal temperature we set it at, which was 235. And so we're actually right now at 259. So no matter what, we know that we're already outside of the range of where we should be cooking. Again, there's no harm, no foul if we're over, instead of 225 or 230, which is where we set it at, that we're now at the range of almost 260. But one nice thing to mention, you can see all our devices stuck right here on top of the Charbroil smoker. None of them doing any damage. I can stick my hand on that bad boy and there's no issues. The side panels are a little hotter, but again, nothing that anybody's going to get burnt on or be sent to the hospital with a third-degree burn. So we'll be back in about an hour and a half. All right, we're back. So we had a chance. It was a little longer than the hour and a half that we initially expected it would be before we got back, but it's been about 2.5 hours. Our prime rib roast is done. However, what we noticed is that the ambient temperature of the grill was about 20 to 30 degrees off at any one given time. So one of the things we noticed with this grill is it doesn't communicate to you very well in that it doesn't tell you exactly what's going on. You never really know the ambient temperature of the grill. However, cooking at 225 or cooking at 275, I mean, it's really, the final product looks pretty darn good. So ultimately, the one thing that you do have to know about this grill is if you are using the internal thermometer probe, as soon as it does reach temperature, it's going to shut the grill off altogether. So that's one thing. It's not necessarily going to communicate that to you, but if you do set it for, let's say you're doing a pork butt at 205 and you have that in there, it reaches 205, well, it's going to automatically turn off regardless of what else is going on as long as you set it for that. So nonetheless, this looks like it came out pretty good. One of the things to note as well, you are going to notice that it's going to take about 40 minutes for those chips to start to smoke, roughly, give or take. So it would be a good idea, and it's also recommended that you put those chips in about 20 to 30 minutes before you're ready to put the meat in, just so that you have some nice smoke going on prior to putting the meat in.